But you know, before that issue happened yesterday, before the Queen passed away yesterday, there was something else that I felt like definitely had to be addressed here on this show.
Look, I can't wash my hands.
People in Jackson, Mississippi are being told to shower with their mouths closed because they don't have access to clean water.
Gotta do what you gotta do.
So what do racism and profit-based interests have to do with a crisis like this? For starters, when water infrastructure was first being built in the US, only the rich could afford to get it. Running water utilities is still a money-making business 200 years later. You see, even though most water systems are owned by local governments, private companies are usually doing the work to treat, repair, and maintain them. In Jackson, that contractor was a company called Siemens. It turned out to be such a bad deal for the city that Jackson won a nearly $90 million settlement over Siemens' botched work. But the roots of this crisis run much deeper. When Mississippi was finally forced to desegregate schools in 1970, white people left for the suburbs and took tax revenue with them. Today, you've got a city that is largely black, with a quarter of people living in poverty, and a crumbling water service that's been neglected for years. Here's what the city of Jackson's mayor has to say about it.
This is a set of accumulated problems based on deferred maintenance that has not taken place over decades.
And then major flooding finally broke the system. And this is an ongoing problem for communities of color across America. In Flint, Newark, Detroit, and on Native reservations, water is not being treated like a human right. And because companies don't sell water as an essential service, they often prioritize short-term profit over repairs and cleanups. But those costs eventually end up on your water bill. So what's happening in Jackson is part of a systemic failure by this country to keep water affordable and accessible for its most marginalized residents.
Yep, there we go, folks, right there. Jackson, Mississippi, a city that, like Gary, Indiana, is a heavily black city. For many years, Jackson, Mississippi has been one of the blackest cities in America, right up there with Gary, Indiana, and Detroit, Michigan. Now, Gary, we are no longer considered eligible to be considered the blackest city in America because we don't have 100,000 people anymore. But Detroit, Jackson, all these cities, these black cities, you notice something, and it's something that has, I have to give credit to, once again, my man, the funky academic, Irmi Osei Frimpong. If you guys can look him up on YouTube, his name is the Funky Academic. And he talks about stuff like this a lot. Irmi Osei Frimpong, the Funky Academic. He says, whenever there is black people, check the water. Wherever there are black people, check the water. Check the water wherever we live in mass, folks. And that means Gary, Indiana, too. Let's just be real. I've seen some pipes being replaced fairly recently. That made me wonder exactly what did they find. Okay? I've talked about this for years. I've had stomach problems for years. A lot of people in my family have had stomach problems for years. Okay? The stuff we're breathing in and drinking in this country, in this city, in this region, Northwest Indiana. We know it was happening at Superfund site over in New Edition in East Chicago. Who knows what's in our water? We have Lake Michigan occupying half of our city's lakefront. Who knows? Who knows what's in our water? I saw Miss McCready and all of her friends putting up the good fight to try to stop this fulcrum plant from happening here in the city of Gary. Who knows what we're breathing in? Who knows what we're going to be drinking in? Who knows what we're going to have? Well, all kinds of health and medical problems that we are going to have and our children and grandchildren are going to have over the next few decades, and the ones we've had over recent decades. And this is the sad part. This is the sad thing right here that we are dealing with. In Jackson, Mississippi, again, where there's black people, check the water. They were already struggling with a deteriorating water system before the rains cut off access to safe drinking water for more than 150,000 people. For years, residents of the majority black city have endured everything from service disruptions, reoccurring boil advisories, to concerns over contaminants like lead and E. coli bacteria, thanks to failures to upgrade Jackson's aging infrastructure. Now the city is under a state of emergency, trying to distribute bottled water in a city where 1 in 4 people live in poverty. Now, technically, this all began about 2 weeks ago when torrential rains caused the Pearl River, which runs through Jackson, to swell and crest around 35 feet high, according to the National Weather Service. In an emergency order issued last Monday, Jackson Mayor Chokwe Lumumba said that the flooding created problems with treating water at the city's primary water treatment facility, the O.B. Curtis Water Plant. But years, and well, even before the rains from a few weeks ago, concerns over Jackson's water system were well documented, and the city was already under a state boil water notice in the month leading up. Remember, where there are black people, check the water. Check the water. Gary, Indiana, check your water. Flint, Michigan, remember what happened in Flint, Michigan. Remember what happened in Detroit when they had water for the Joe Louis Arena, but had no water for the black people who was living in 85% of the population. But they had water for the Joe Louis Arena, none for its people. Check the water. Newark, New Jersey, check your water. Atlanta, check your water. Everybody out there, check your water. Now, across Jackson, Mississippi now, this situation is actually a replay from last winter, when bruising storms blanketed the state in ice and nearly decimated the city's water system. Pipes and water mains burst throughout the city, leaving tens of thousands of people without water, some as long as 3 weeks. The crisis came at a moment when the city was continuing to confront widespread worries about the safety of its drinking water. In 2020, the EPA issued an emergency order warning that the water system in Jackson, Mississippi posed an imminent and substantial endangerment to residents and could contain dangerous contaminants such as E. coli. 4 years earlier than that, state health officials alerted the city about elevated levels of lead in its drinking water. At the root of the challenges in Jackson are decades of underinvestment in a sprawling water system that made up of 1,500 miles of water mains, some of which are over 100 years old. Check your water. Wherever there are black people, check your water. In 2013, the city sought to overhaul the system through a $90 million contract with Siemens to upgrade sewer lines, water treatment plants, and to install new water sewer billing systems for residents. But the deal brought myriad of new issues for the city, including the installation of faulty water meters that measured water use in gallons instead of cubic feet. In the years following the installation, some residents received exorbitant bills for months of water use at a time, while others weren't billed at all. That's called capitalism, folks. There you go. Now, the city ultimately sued Siemens and several local subcontractors for $450 million in damages, and actually got $90 million, as the video talked about. They got $90 million in the settlement in 2020. Hello, caller.
Hey, Scott, I'm going to call back again. Is it okay?
Hey, go ahead.
Listen, I heard a caller call in, and they were talking about how Harry, like, left there because of the royal family. Harry left there because he liked to party. And Meghan, she's a diamond, okay? So that's why he got her. It wasn't about no color. It was because she's a diamond, and if you like to party, you always want a diamond on your side. He had his diamond on his side. Now let me tell you about his daddy and them diamonds. And the queen, she shouldn't give not one diamond back, okay?
Why not?
Those diamonds was bought and paid for by the royal family. They did plenty for Africa. They did not exploit Africa. Now,
Are you serious? Wait, whoa, you're going to have to explain this to me. For the callers, you're going to have to explain this for the audience at home. You're saying that the royal family, the British, did not exploit Africa.
The Africans exploited themselves, okay? The chiefs of those tribes exploited those Africans, okay? Now,
so all those Kenyans put themselves in concentration camps and tortured themselves and massacred themselves?
Do you know that for certain? The Africans exploited themselves, but they didn't think past where they were thinking at, okay? Now, I don't want to get off into the logistics.
No, I'm asking if you're gonna make a claim like that the British, that Europeans didn't exploit Africans, then again we're gonna have to talk about that.
I'm not going to get off into the logistics because I don't know about it and you don't know about it. Like the water, I got colors in water. I don't be worried about the water that comes out the pipes, okay?
Okay.
Now, when I bathe, yeah, I worry about that maybe just a little bit, but I don't worry about things like that. I don't worry about the logistics of the whole thing like you. You spent a lot of time. That caller, she called me and she gave you high praise, but that was all good. But let me tell you, I think you're going down the wrong track, son.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for your call. I appreciate you your concern. Call back. Feel free to call back anytime. We appreciate your opinions here on Issues and Answers. Hello, caller.
Yeah, I just want to say he's a liar. He's a big-ass liar. Go and do your homework. You're a liar. You're a big-ass liar. You're listening to something that you don't even know what you're talking about. You big-ass liar. Yeah, I said it. Yeah, I said it. You're a liar.
Okay.
You're a big-ass liar.
Well, all right.
Listen to that. Listen to that.
Yes.
You're a liar. You're a big-ass liar. You don't even know what you're talking about. Do your history, man.
Oh, I agree.
Do your history. Go back. You talking in this strange voice. Trying to disguise your voice. Don't disguise your voice. You big-ass liar. You liar. Yeah, I said it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for your call, brother. I absolutely agree. Hold on, caller. Now, what is it going to take to fix this system? The city has been unable to fully chip away at its service backlog, in part because of a shrinking population that has left it with a tax base that is roughly 20% smaller than it was in 1980. They have struggled to secure state infrastructure funding. Man, who does that sound like? Who does that sound like? A shrinking tax base, a shrinking population that leaves you with an eroded tax base, and the inability to get funds from your state, a highly racist right-wing state. Now, last year, at least 2 bills aimed at helping raise money for the water system repairs died in Mississippi's legislature. And in June 2020, Governor Reeves, a Republican, vetoed bipartisan legislation designed to help residents with overdue water bills, which in turn would have enabled the city to collect sorely needed water revenue. In vetoing the bill, the governor acknowledged that residents got overcharged in the past, but said legislation would allow politicians to say that individuals are not responsible for paying their water bill. Reeves also said that there was no safeguards in place to ensure that aid would only go to the impoverished or needy. Now, Mayor Chokwe Lumumba has estimated that modernizing the city's infrastructure could cost as much as $2 billion. Mississippi received $75 million from the federal infrastructure bill signed by Joe Biden last year for water and sewage needs, but that money is for the entire state of Mississippi, not just Jackson. Let me get this call really quick. Hello, caller.
Hey, Scott, I wouldn't call back, but you don't have any more to call in. You don't know nothing about what he's talking about.
Okay.
You tell him to go have another shot of Wild Irish Rum.
Okay. We're not going to do that here. We're not going to do that. All right. I'm not going to go back and forth. We're not going to play telephone tag here. Okay. Now, also, I mean, this is only going to get worse, folks. In a lot of these cities, this is only going to get worse because climate change is threatening water supplies all over the world, but especially in this country. The historic floods that happened in Mississippi's Pearl River are only going to happen more often. Only going to happen more often. Now, after Siemens, a private company, came in and screwed the city of Jackson over, which is why they won that lawsuit, that $90 million lawsuit against them, the governor had this to say. Guess what the governor's answer, the Republican governor's answer to this was? This crisis was. Guess what he, a right-wing Republican, feels like the answer could be. Privatization. Now, Siemens, a private company, came in and messed things up and had to end up paying the city. The governor said he's open once again to privatizing their water system, as the right tends to believe, okay? And so here we are. Here we are in all these majority black cities, including Gary, Jackson, Mississippi, Flint, Michigan, Detroit, Michigan. We all have the same issues with the same types of politicians in our particular states. We as a society, as a community, let's just be real, particularly us in the black community, have to get serious about a political agenda for us and stop carrying water for these corporate political parties. We saw what Rick Snyder did in Michigan. We're seeing what Tate is doing in Mississippi. We know what the good old boys do here in the city of Gary. Expect sometime in the near future, I'm going to do a segment, at least a segment on the incorporation of Maryville and how the state of Indiana broke its own laws to bring the town of Maryville into existence. We're definitely gonna have to talk about that in some upcoming weeks or months. The anniversary of Maryville's incorporation is coming up, so I'm gonna try to talk about it in conjunction with that. But let me get this caller before I go to the Happy Happies. Hello, caller.
Good evening.
Hey, how you doing?
Okay, yourself.
I'm good. I'm
glad. Now, I'm listening to the news about the water supplies.
Yeah.
And I know that with global warming, places are getting hotter and hotter, and things are happening that had not happened heretofore. We're also going to be seeing problems with irrigation that we've not seen before.
You better believe it.
Okay. so that's going to be a recurring theme in other places, just as you've mentioned. I do want to ask about now. I had not heard anything about East Chicago New Edition.
Oh,
now,
you didn't
might
hear?
be talking about Calumet.
Oh, wasn't it New Edition that had the Superfund site?
Calumet.
Okay, maybe it was Calumet where they had the. I thought it was New Edition where they had the housing complex that had to be torn down. That was Calumet.
Calumet.
Okay, all right.
Right.
Thank you for the correction, though. Thank you for the correction.
I kind of Googled it because I used to work in that area a little bit.
Yeah, I should know. I'm from the harbor. I should know.
Well, the areas are small, so they overlap.
Yeah.
But I'm also looking. They were trying to do some determinations on things as recently as in the spring, and they were saying that they've removed part of the problem, and they're working on the soil and trying to restore things. But the city of East Chicago would rather have industrial development on that land rather than residential, and frankly, I would tend to agree just as a precaution. But the residents in the area who are also in that adjacent area across that little, I don't know what you want to call it, but that area where now they've had the residences for many, many years. Some of those folk have owned their own private homes, and they are saying that they don't want any industrial development there because it will decrease the value of their homes, which is true. And we're looking in Gary at some of the same situations where people, we're hearing that folks over by Edison want industry over there rather than to have it vacant. So these are some considerations that so many cities are going through right now as our populations change and sometimes dwindle. Thank you.
All right, now, I actually think that these water crises that are going on all over the South and the Southwest especially, we're going to start seeing people running back here. A lot of people are going to be running back here. I tell people all the time, when me and the Rev were here last year, we did a segment on who's buying up all the real estate in Northwest Indiana. And I told all of you guys who own your own houses, who own your own property, do not sell and abandon this place. I know that it looks like we've had better days, and Lord knows we have, okay? I was talking about this a few weeks ago during, I believe it was during the Men Who Destroyed America segment. I only know this region, because I was born during the 80s, I only know the crack era and beyond. That's it. I was not alive when Gary and East Chicago and Hammond and all these places were vibrant places of industry and commerce. I don't know those places. All I know is the crack era and beyond. That's it. And so, again, having not known what Gary was like in the 50s and 60s and when things were booming, I can't speak to that as in my personal experience. But as somebody who is looking at geopolitics, the way that things are going, and seeing the amount of strife that is already starting to happen over water, all over the world, all over Europe, all over Africa. Europe just had the hottest summer that they ever had on record. Thousands of people died all over Europe. Wildfires all over Europe. You had better believe that a lot of this land here in the Great Lakes, where we have 20% of the world's fresh water, 21% of the world's fresh water, folks, in our backyard. I can literally leave my house in Miller and be knee-deep in Lake Michigan in about 10 minutes. 10, 15 minutes. People are going to be fighting wars over that in the near future. And all of you who own property adjacent to that are going to be reaping some real benefits from that in the near future. So I'm just saying, they want you to abandon your house. They want you to abandon your property. They want you to abandon Gary, East Chicago, Hammond. You know, they want you to abandon this area so that all those people from Chicago, the rich people from Chicago and all those other places can buy up all this property. And, you know, who knows what they're going to do with it. But I'm telling you, we got to keep this stuff in-house. A lot of people are going to be coming from around the world trying to buy up a lot of this lakefront property here, and they have already started. You know, please be smart about this. Do not give up on Gary. Do not give up on East Chicago, on Hammond, on these regions. Do not give up on our region whatsoever, on a Chicagoland region. We will rise again. You better believe that.